Вы на платформе RUS.LSM ЛВ. Это программа ТЧК. Я приветствую всех наших зрителей. Напомню, меня зовут Алена Борисова. И также напомню, что мы в прямом эфире. Это значит, что вы можете использовать возможность присоединяться к нашей трансляции в чате. Задавайте вопросы, пишите комментарии. Я, как всегда, буду следить за ними по мере своей возможности. Ну и, конечно, без лишних предисловий с удовольствием представляю сегодня своего гостя в этой студии. Впервые посол Украины в Латвии Анатолий Kutsevol. Добрый день.
Good afternoon.
Для начала я хотела бы пояснить, что предыдущий посол Александр Мищенко был гостем наших программ несколько раз, даже, наверное, сейчас собьюсь со счета. У нас в эфире выступали и советники Офиса президента, и депутаты Верховной Рады, и вице-спикер. А вы сегодня в качестве языка нашего интервью выбрали английский. А говоришь, что все мною только что перечисленные говорили с нами на русском. Почему английский язык?
Well, it's a personal decision for everyone, for a newcomer to come and to decide which language you would like to use. First of all, I do apologize still that I cannot do an interview in Latvian. I still have to learn it and to be fluent enough to speak in Latvian. But as a diplomat, I'm required also to respect the national language and or to use international one. So my decision is in those circumstances is actually English one, and I used to have an interviews plenty from the first day of coming to Latvia and giving my accreditation letters is English. So I decided I did actually one comment in Russian, but still it's just because I've been invited by presidential office for that media. But it was one exception, day one, and no exceptions anymore.
В декабре прошлого года вы были назначены на эту должность Владимиром Зеленским, но только недавно, вот в мае, получили аккредитацию и уже приступили непосредственно к своей работе. Вообще расскажите, как вы сюда приехали, удалось ли вам пообщаться с предшественником, как раз господином Мищенко, и как вообще у послов происходит передача дел от одного к другому, если такое существует?
Well, I had the honor to be appointed in December. So end of December, and they came only in May because of routine of existing work, because my previous post was Deputy State Secretary of the Ukrainian government. It's the highest bureaucratic position in our hierarchy to deal with foreign relations, development aid inside the government building. So I had plenty of tasks to complete before I came to Latvia, but I had really big opportunity to meet Latvian leadership already in Ukraine. And since that, I started just transferring of different type of knowledges. So I started my preparation even before then I came to Riga actually. And in our practice, yes, we have conversations with the former ambassadors. I had the chance to talk to former ambassadors who were placed to Riga before. And in our practice, we do not meet in country of presence two ambassadors. So one has to leave, another has to come in some period of time. So we choose that for 1 month's time we had a charge d'affaires between us. So somebody who will be preparing the background before.
А перед тем, как приехать на службу в новую страну, созывают ли вас новых послов, назначенных в Министерстве иностранных дел Украины, условно, и ставят перед вами какие-то дипломатические задачи перед представителем в конкретной стране, что от этой страны, допустим, там, не знаю, требуется получить, или какие задачи стоят, или какая миссия перед послом стоит, как официальным представителем интересов руководства этой страны?
Well, first of all, I do believe that in each country there is a procedure for posting, and that kind of procedure is used before even decision is taken. So you go through several interviews and you also express your vision on how you would like to develop relations and how to continue existing relations, because so far the level of relations which we have between Ukraine and Latvia is the highest ever, and key challenge here is to be at the same speed actually, and to find new solutions and new ways to develop cooperation. And for myself, I had a chance to think that what might be after the war or something which will lead to end the war. So my clear vision is that to help Ukrainian people and as well as to help Latvian people to develop gently our economy for the sake of benefit of both countries. So one of the key sectors which I will be focused on is actually economy, to add to what has been agreed before.
Я недавно прочитала интервью вашего коллеги, посла Украины в Германии, Алексея Макеева, и в котором тот в качестве своих основных рабочих приоритетов, вы уже тоже высказывались на эту тему, ставит перед собой задачи в этой стране, такие как боевые танки, системы ПВО и артиллерийские установки. У вас в Латвии есть такие какие-то конкретные цели по бронетехнике и боеприпасов? То есть что-то, какое-то задание получить еще больше чего-то?
Well, comparing to Germany, for sure, Latvia is not that big scale in weaponry and in generally in military defense. But I also have my task here. I won't announce them because it's for sake of security for both countries. Germany has been known as one of the countries more or less neutral to what has been going on for the last 2 years before the war started. And that is why probably the higher pressure is needed there, but not in Latvia. So Latvian government and the Minister of Defense, I would call them truly patriots of Ukraine, and they truly believe that we are fighting for the sake of democracy and human rights. That is why I don't need to push them on deciding what kind of army they have to supply or what kind of weapons they should provide us. So this is actually the point why Latvia donated the most actually percentage per capita compared to other countries.
Как вы именно готовились к приезду сюда? Может быть, что-то смотрели, что-то читали, чтобы понять что-нибудь про эту страну немножко больше?
Well, I've been here first time in 2016. I visited Latvia officially. The purpose of the visit was quite linked to my previous job. I dealt mainly in my career with European integration. I'm still dealing with that in the process of joining the European Union. So I got the candidacy status as a bureaucrat, I would say I got it, because I did my best to prepare the candidacy from the part of bureaucrats. And in 2016, I've been here for the consultations with the State Secretary of the government. And we were going through the process how to create the system which will link to the candidacy status. So I can definitely say that I use this experience and we got the candidacy status.
Вы никогда до этого не работали послом, вы уже сказали, что вы занимались евроинтеграцией, но это вот впервые в вашей карьере такой опыт представителя дипломатии. Помимо официальных встреч, с чего и начинается всякая работа посла, с чего вы еще начали работу здесь?
Well, I wouldn't say that my career has not been linked to diplomacy. Actually, my career has been always linked to diplomacy, but inside the capital. So my career responsibility was, and for quite a long period of time, direct contacts with all diplomatic missions working in Kiev. So I would say that definitely I was there. As a high bureaucrat inside the government, I was always on the missions with the Prime Minister on his external visits to any country for all bilateral meetings. And so I wouldn't say that I've been the part of the diplomacy. I had a chance to see diplomacy from different angles. So my career was both economy, environmental issues, presidential office and the cabinet office. So I saw it from different angles, but not purely political one as a career diplomat. But still, I do believe that my career is also a diplomatic one.
Хорошо, да, вы тесно связаны были на протяжении всей своей профессиональной деятельности в дипломатии, но тогда вопрос оставляю. С чего вы начали свою работу здесь? Сейчас уже какой-то есть у вас, как говорят, не знаю, там, кейс, над чем работаете, или что надо закончить?
Well, my case here is actually to continue working on political level with all stakeholders with whom previous ambassadors started, and as well as with whom we developed relations. So as I said, even this year, I had the chance to meet in Kyiv. I had the chance to meet Chancellor, Chairman of the Parliament, and Prime Minister, and also President. And since I came here, I also met President and Chairman of the Parliament, and I'm going to meet Prime Minister, despite the fact that I had the chance to meet several ministers already. And my point is that for each minister, I have our own agenda to develop is, since I have good linkages with the members of the Ukrainian government, and I clearly understand what they need. So we can build partnerships between ministry to ministry and having more outcomes, more results by the end.
Что вас удивило в Латвии по приезду? Вы же переехали с семьей, то есть непосредственно в ближайшие 4 года вы будете здесь жить, вы будете познавать эту страну. Может быть, уже есть какой-то, не знаю, наверное, о крупном культурном шоке говорить рано, раз вы здесь уже и были, и плюс-минус мы находимся в Европе. Но что-то вас потрясло на каком-нибудь, может быть, бытовом уровне?
Well, yes, absolutely. It's my family is Kievan family, so the whole life I'm living in Kiev, which is quite big city. And probably we were used to live faster in some sense of life. So getting services, having 24/7 some kind of services, working 24/7. So I would say that each place gives you something new to your experience. Sometimes you just have to say, hold on. And you have to do it slowly, but in specific time frames. So this is also important to understand. So my family is, I would say, shifting from that reality to this one. Absolutely, it has nothing to do to compare with a peaceful Ukraine and peaceful time. Nowadays, people are living quite in challenging period. Kyiv has been shelled several times last week and this week, so you hear these air silence, and this is a quiet city comparing to what we heard. Sometimes we listen to ambulances or fast-going cars, and we just think whether it's air silent or not. So just that kind of outcome which we have in shifting this time of life.
С тех пор, как Россия начала полномасштабную войну, по данным ООН, свои дома покинули более 16 миллионов украинцев. Это общая цифра, как и внутри страны. И из них 8 миллионов человек вынужденно уехали из страны, спасая свои жизни. Большую часть переселенцев приняли у себя Германия и Польша, но некоторые люди в том числе приехали к нам в Латвию. И вот по последним данным Министерства охраны среды и регионального развития, убежище в Латвии получили 43 тысячи украинцев. Это официальные, которые получили документы. Но, как говорят наше министерстве, в последнее время очень активно наблюдается сокращение числа украинцев в нашей стране, потому что люди предпочитают уже возвращаться назад домой в Украину. Может быть, для начала вопрос, может быть, вы располагаете более свежими цифрами? Вот сколько сейчас у нас украинцев в Латвии?
Well, my data shows me that we are estimating that 47.7 thousand generally of Ukrainians came to Latvia. I also see the statistics data that says that each month there are 10,000 Ukrainians which are crossing Russia and the Latvian border. So, and also I fully understand the fact, and I saw queues on Polish-Ukrainian border, that Ukrainians are coming back to their homes. Specifically to those which are in western central part of Ukraine, those which are not shelled that much, mainly people who are staying here are those who lost actually their homes. It's eastern part of Ukraine, occupied territories, people just don't have a place where to come back, and on that we are currently working and working on the fact where we can provide them these places. So my data actually is that I'm considering that more than 15,000 people already left Latvia, or they left for another country in European Union or elsewhere, or they just came back to Ukraine. So generally, I do consider that the overall amount of Ukrainians is around 30,000 in Latvia, but they're traveling quite often.
А как вы относитесь к тому, что у людей возникает желание вернуться в страну, которую по-прежнему обстреливают, где по-прежнему, не знаю, происходят постоянные бомбежки, никогда не знаешь, в каком городе, в какой дом может прилететь ракета?
Well, it's as I started, it's a kind of psychological element actually. You can talk about that before you start to realize on yourself how do you feel. So all of us we were missing Ukraine a lot, and our hometowns, even when we were internally displaced persons, because my family also left Kyiv because of mission on the first day. They had to and continued to work, but they stayed in Ukraine generally. But missing in your hometown is quite a challenging thing, and you start got using actually to the situation when everything around you is about uncertain situation. You hear these explosions, you hear these sirens, etc. But psychologically, you get used to it. And after that, I only started to understand this concept of Israeli living the whole life under shelling. So they're smaller, quiet, but they live under the shelling. And Ukrainians, they do the same. So we even sometimes joking in social media that siren is ongoing and Ukrainians just still continue doing the ordinary type of things which they used to do. So they're not panicking, etc. So, but it's not about all people, I would say. Some part of people, they fled the country because of the situation, because they cannot resist to it, and it's totally normal. But other people, they stood, and probably because of that, we are still fighting back, and we are winning this war again.
Ну, может быть, нашу трансляцию сейчас смотрят и украинцы, живущие в Латвии, и, может быть, украинцы, живущие в других странах. Мы знаем, что нас смотрят не только латвийцы, поэтому пишите, задавайте комментарии. У нас сегодня в гостях посол Украины в Латвии Анатолий Kutsevol. Буду рада их зачитать. А у вас уже случались здесь встречи с украинскими беженцами? Я не говорю, может быть, в каких-то официальных пресс-конференциях, а какие-то консультации, визиты. К вам же можно попасть на визит?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I had the pleasure to meet plenty of Ukrainians already in Riga on different occasions, memorizing or celebrating. But I also paid two visits to see Ukrainians in Valmiera. So not that much comparing to what might be ahead, but still it's. Recently I met Ukrainians who are living in Valmiera, and we were talking about what are their needs actually. So they're missing quite a culture. They're missing some education for their kids. I mean, in Ukrainian, they're not complaining about education in Latvia, but if they are missing Ukrainian education, it means that they would like to come back. So for me, it's a kind of signal, and I fully understand that they would be ready once a peaceful situation is restored, and once we will be ready to provide them with their own home.
Да, то есть, по большому счету, скучают по родине, ее не хватает, дети нуждаются в украинском образовании и украинских медикаментах, да, но если, наверное, человек их активно пользовал. А какие еще, может быть, чаяния у живущих украинцев здесь, на что жалуются, с какими проблемами здесь сталкиваются?
Well, I guess the difference is that every time when you go to another country, you need to adapt yourself. So you cannot bring your reality to one country and believe that everything will be going on in that way. So including the, I would say, ordinary culture of things, how people are doing the things, how long they work, at what time they start, at what time they finish, what type of weekends they have. So it's Ukrainians are bringing their own culture with them. But with full respect, they have to learn also the host country culture, and they have to learn Latvian to live here, but they would like to preserve Ukrainian culture too. The key thing I would say that is for them, which I heard, is to get a distinct work. To get a distinct work, we will be working how to ensure that they get all profiles, that the companies get these profiles as well, and they can start earn themselves, but not to be only supported by the state or local community.
Вот в чате вопрос к вам. Если к вам, к послу, обратятся русскоязычные граждане Украины, вы с ними будете общаться на каком языке?
Well, I will open to discussion, and my language to Ukrainian citizens will be Ukrainian.
Если у вас представление о том, сколько украинцев может здесь, вы уже сказали, что общаясь со многими, вы понимаете, что они уже намерены вернуться, но если у вас представление о том, сколько украинцев может остаться здесь навсегда, просто потому что им некуда возвращаться, либо их дом разбомблен и просто негде будет жить, или они здесь начинают строить новую жизнь, не знаю, создали семью и как-то обустроились. Потому что я ознакомилась с опросами Германии, которая приняла около 1 миллиона украинских беженцев, и этот опрос показал, что более трети из них хотели бы остаться в Германии навсегда.
Well, I have my own understanding on the situation actually with those people who are currently fled the country, and let's assume that it's a first day of peace, and there is a relief actually from the war, and then people start thinking on what is going on actually. Partially, there will be a situation when people who fled the country, they won't be living, because they got used to the circumstances in the country where they live. They fully enjoy this type of life. They got jobs. They learned language. Their kids are already fine with the school or preschool, no matter what. But they started to set up a life. This is totally understandable. The most important here is to understand that they don't lose identity. Secondly, there are part of people who for sure will be coming back to Ukraine. So because they just wait the moment to come back. They have a full life set up in Ukraine. They would be ready to come back to these realities and to continue doing such type of things which they were used to, and also to grow kids in Ukraine, because they just want. They were not fine with the situation in any country which they were abroad, but they are ready to come back to Ukraine. And there might be a third category of people who actually are uncertain in what they will be doing, depending on what kind of situations they will have in Ukraine and what kind of situations they will have in the country, in the host country which they stay. So I do believe several people who will be able to travel, I mean mainly male people, to travel from Ukraine to another country, they might come to their families. And then those families will decide whether they will stay abroad or they will come back to Ukraine. So everything depends on this merging of families. Mainly women and children fled the country, and the male were forced to stay because this is a war and we cannot allow male people to travel across abroad. So three different categories, and I do believe that everything will show up once it will be day for relief.
Вам по-человечески, когда закончится война, будет, я не знаю, понятно или будет жалко, что Украина не досчитается многих семей, многих детей, потому что они выберут продолжать жить в Европе, или наоборот, радостно за то, что в Европе так широко и массово представлены украинцы, которые интегрировались, которые нашли себя и, в принципе, показали, что могут быть хорошими, продуктивными европейцами со всеми вытекающими ценностями?
Well, I will start from the end, actually. I do believe that Ukrainians are fully Europeans, and we are showing quite good results, and only because of that Russia started this unprovoked aggression, because we started to develop too fast, and showing how fast we can go to European countries, traveling easily, coming back, growing economy, being leader in digitalization, showing these practical things, and also people who actually found jobs across Europe. They were actually perceived well by different communities, and the point was that we were doing good. And I'm really missing this day of peace. And unfortunately, the war led to the number of people which we already lost. We lost them physically already, and who knows how much we will lose then. But what I'm sure that Ukrainians who fled Ukraine because of the war, they won't lose their identity. So I do believe that our overall estimated number, which we counted like Ukrainians living abroad in different countries with also different nationalities, like Canada, US, Italy, Spain, Portugal, wherever, and also Latvia, despite the fact that they have this new nationality, I mean a passport, but they call themselves still Ukrainians. And for us, it was a number of 63 million Ukrainians generally living in the world. So we will just need to understand that those still are Ukrainians.
63 миллиона, да, украинцев всего в мире живет?
Yes, we counted before the war, it was 63 million Ukrainians.
Вернемся сейчас в Латвию и к детям, к образованию, о котором вы уже начали частично говорить. Вот по данным нашего Министерства образования, сейчас более 4000 украинских детей ходят либо в здешние детские сады, либо в здешние школы. И все они могут сейчас учиться только на латышском языке. И многие из них не готовы к такому быстрому погружению, просто потому что не понимают содержание предмета, а из-за этого переживают, и, как следствие, получают плохие оценки, и потом опять из-за этого переживают. Одно дело начальные классы, другое дело, наверное, средние, да, когда сложнее адаптироваться, и язык, особенно узкоспецифических предметов, он достаточно сложен к восприятию. В Польше, например, я посмотрела, что из-за таких проблем власти намеренно тем, кто начал учиться, позволили детям перейти на дистанционное обучение именно с украинскими преподавателями. У нас, в принципе, тоже возможна такая форма, когда ребята приезжают сюда, дети, ну, а физически они находятся здесь, но учатся они в онлайн-школах Украины, но это тоже не всегда стабильно, потому что из-за бомбежек пропадает электричество, и, соответственно, уроки могут срываться из-за отсутствия интернета. Что вы вообще думаете об образовании украинских детей на латышском языке в этом контексте, и какую форму, наверное, предпочтительнее было бы сохранить для детей, чтобы они не потеряли ничего в качестве?
Well, COVID prepared us to live through the war. So I'm really happy that because of COVID, because of technologies, and because of our digitalized breakthrough, we have this possibility, still have this possibility to teach Ukrainian children in Ukrainian schools. So they are allowed to do that. Even despite the blackout which we had since last October and until this spring in Ukraine, and plenty of shelling, so even teachers, schools, and kids, they found solutions to study. It's studying. It's always a difficult story, and the kids also have a high pressure. But it doesn't mean that we should just give up because of the system. I truly believe that there should be some kind of part-time education for those who are living abroad in Ukrainian, just to keep the possibility to know Ukrainian language and culture and continue studying in schools if they need this certificate. So it's up to them. But when it comes to the host country, my own experience, I've been visiting Italy since my 7 years old each summer, and I studied Italian, and I had to learn Italian. So it is obvious. And if parents decide to live in one country with their kids, so the kids and the family have to study this language. If they aim to stay in this country for a long period of time, so it's up to them to decide what kind of education. But full respect to national language should be always.
Рижская украинская школа – это единственная школа в Латвии, где учителя владеют украинским, ведут уроки на украинском, и понятно, что в этой школе как раз-таки и больше всего учащихся, приехавших из Украины. Рижская дума обещала еще в прошлом году предоставить дополнительные помещения, чтобы можно было вместить больше классов, больше детей. Не знаете ли вы, сделано ли это? Состоялось ли расширение?
We're still in the consultations, both with mayor office and still with the school to identify what type of education should be have. For me, it's actually the challenge is to understand what kind of program we should have for all pupils who are studying at school. So, with full respect to national legislation, we cannot create an institution when they understand only Ukrainian, and they got a Latvian certificate. So if it's a tough way, they should got 2 certificates at the same time. So there should be some kind of certification for the school. I'm really happy that we have such school. and happy that it was even before the war. But generally, I don't think that it has been planned in the way that it could host that many Ukrainian children as we have right now. So generally, the approach would be to create plenty of Ukrainian schools. But then what kind of synergy we will have after it? So for the sake of all of us, it's better to stop the war.
Правозащитное движение Amnesty International в этом году опубликовало несколько исследований, посвященных как раз-таки положению украинских детей в разных странах за пределами Украины. И в большей степени речь там, конечно же, касалась Польши и Германии, потому что именно там больше всего украинских детей. И говорилось о частых конфликтах на этнической почве между, соответственно, украинскими детьми и там немцами и поляками. Что детям иногда приходится сталкиваться с определенными трудностями именно из-за своей национальности, с буллингом. И хочу вас в связи с этим спросить, перенестись в Латвию, слышали ли вы что-нибудь о конфликтах подобного рода здесь?
I didn't hear anything about that so far. Probably, I don't know. Nothing has been sent to my attention on that. But generally, it's ordinary thing that when it's schools are two different nations and children still are growing up and they have conflicts, and it's normal. And the point is to get the better education for them. It's I would say high responsibility for teachers to teach these intercultural things, how to live in a community gently. US has been created on different cultures, and people actually went to US schools presenting different cultures, different languages, and they would say that it was a bullying, but still it's a competition of different nations, and kids are trying to actually grow in that way. I'm not supporting at all bullying, and I'm totally in favor of creating all circumstances to predict that, and as well as to have any kind of counteractions to that. But still, I don't believe that it's a systematic problem.
От маленьких к взрослым. В Латвии сейчас проходит лечение 22 раненых украинских бойца. Это не первый раз, когда украинские военные приезжают сюда на реабилитацию. Здесь периодически им проводят индивидуальные операции, и осколки вынимают из тела, и кости собирают, восстанавливают. Вы уже, может быть, не знаю, посещали в больнице военных украинских, нет?
Yes, even today. This morning.
Сегодня?
Yes. This morning I went to rehabilitation center and met several Ukrainian soldiers who arrived recently to go through rehabilitation, different type of casualties for them and wounds. But what I saw in the rehabilitation center that it's quite equipped well with modern technologies, and as well as they do believe that they can pass through it as well, and medical staff is also ready. This is actually what is needed. But I do believe that it's not only about 22 generally, or 20 or more. Hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers went through it, and even thousands ahead. And we still have to create a system, not in Latvia but in Ukraine. So what we've discussed is to create a proper system in Ukraine for rehabilitation of Ukrainian soldiers. Unfortunately, right now we are forced, and we are asking our all international partners to host and to have Ukrainian soldiers in these centers, because mainly medical staff from Ukrainian institutions are trying to help near to the war front at all.
На линии фронта. Вот сейчас новость буквально последних дней, что Япония готовится впервые взять на реабилитацию украинских военных, и другие страны постоянно это делают, и Германия, и Хорватия. Скажите, а известно ли вам, как вообще осуществляется этот порядок? Кто и куда из украинцев отправится за границу, если отправляются, а кто должен остаться в стране, лечиться в местных госпиталях?
Well, it's up to medical staff to decide. So all servicemen, they actually once they wounded, they go to the hospitals, and then there are people working in this area which are identifying what kind of treatment you need. And if they don't have facilities in Ukraine for such kind of treatment, they have the list of different partners who are providing the possibility. And they're looking at the possibility to transfer those people. So transferability of these people is also one of the key points why. It's a long way, unfortunately. Before the war, we had to fly just 2 hours from Kyiv to Riga. And right now, you need to spend a day, 24 hours to get to Riga, actually. So from Ukraine to Poland, and then from Poland to Latvia is quite a long way to travel. So
Я боюсь представить, как в Японию добираться.
Absolutely, that's the point. So if there will be a decision, so that might be also an idea for who exactly can make such a long trip and for what kind of treatment there should be. So I really grateful that Japan is ready to do that, and all countries which are doing that as well. But still, it's a possibility. Every time when there is a possibility, and depends who can pay for that.
Вернемся к вашей работе. Благодарю зрителей за то, что активно подключаются, комментируют. Я вернусь чуть позже к вашим вопросам. Хотелось бы еще поговорить об украинском посольстве. Вот в Латвии, с точки зрения политической обстановки, вы находитесь достаточно, мне кажется, в атмосфере такой дружелюбия, понимания и поддержки. Если вы там еще не почувствовали этого, я думаю, вы обязательно это почувствуете. Скажите, а поддерживаете, не знаю, есть ли такая традиция поддерживать связь с другими коллегами на местах в разных странах, которые работают, допустим, с другими политическими ориентациями в государствах? Ну, я говорю, может быть, о после Украины в Армении, или о после Украины в Узбекистане, или Венгрии. Насколько там работа отличается от вашей?
Well, each country is different. Sometimes you just see one sort of the situation which you think about, but then two sorts, like an iceberg, you can see it. As diplomats, we have good communication between all ambassadors, and depends on what are our needs from the point of view of content, and what we would like to actually to promote inside the country where we are posted. So I have good records with local ambassadors who are working here in Riga. I had the possibility to meet in United Emirates ambassador as well as dean of all ambassadors here, and looking forward to have separate meetings with ambassadors, but already had plenty of opportunities to chat with them. My colleagues around the world, they on a daily basis we are in contact, so it's easier to contact with anyone who is there.
А нет такого, что Министерство иностранных дел Украины, поскольку вы все находитесь в разных странах, устраивает какую-то видео-пресс-конференцию по удаленной связи, вы подключаете все послы, и вот всех слушают, дают слово выступающим, и вы делитесь все опытом и так далее. Нет такого? Так это не происходит?
Well, in practice, we as all ambassadors around the world, we have the topic for each communication. Then we meet for a specific topic for discussion, and then we can chat or jointly, depending on how many people are at the call at the same time, and then probably separately. It's more efficient.
Может быть, вам что-нибудь коллеги рассказывают о реакции в других странах? Вот буквально недавно, 10 мая, президент России Владимир Путин снял ограничения на полеты в Грузию, открыл авиасообщение и снял ограничения о визах. И это авиасообщение прямое, недавно первый полет состоялся, и Грузия считает, что такие меры никак не ухудшат ее отношения с Украиной и западными странами. Вам как видятся такие действия?
Well, I saw actually pictures and from people staying at the road and blocking the passage for those who arrived by plane. There is respectively there were actually quite good relations with Georgia before that, and it's up to Georgian government to take a decision whether do they stay. But all relations with Russia for us, it's a red flag, and we do not consider this as a truly friendship for us. So we do not see that somebody could be neutral in this war. All world has to win this war together, or it's not possible.
Вы до вступления в должность посла занимались вопросами внешнеэкономической политики Украины, реформирования даже таможенного законодательства, евроинтеграционными вопросами, как вы сегодня сказали, и были замсекретаря Кабинета министров. Хочу поговорить о совместимости Украины с стандартом Евросоюза, копенгагенских критериев. В какой части вы сейчас, может быть, отвечаете? Вы, Украина, отвечает. Где вы можете себя, может быть, определить на какой-нибудь такой вот вымышленной оси до вступления в Евросоюз?
Well, overall process of joining the EU has clear procedures of specific steps to do so. So first of all, we had since the beginning of independence, restoring independence of Ukraine in 1991, we started this path of thinking what kind of decision should we take to be one day a member of a former European community, not union, but community, it was called that time. We had a good strategy, and strategy 1996 said that we should be relevantly approximated with all criteria. And those criteria, they go through different areas, specifically like 35 areas mainly identified as a EU acquis. And those areas were on our table as a government from, I do believe, from 1996, and then specifically with specific recommendations and also obligations since 2004, since the Orange Revolution. And then once we got the so-called association agreement, because of which President Yanukovych decided not to sign in 2013 in Vilnius, we got more criteria and more obligations for the European Union membership. So we fulfilled plenty of those. So the association agreement, we considered more than 60% of achievements of it and completion. But then comes audit by the European Union. And audit is the thing when you provide an answer to a EU questionnaire. So our task in 2022, since the beginning of war, was to provide an application of joining the European Union and to provide an answers to EU questionnaire. So answers to EU questionnaire, all in all, were 6,000 of pages in English, providing answers how we fit in overall rules. And because of these 6,000 pages and political decisions, we got the candidacy status, but 7 recommendations which we also have to fulfill before negotiation process will start. So it's quite a complexity, but all in all, I would say that in specific areas, Ukraine already fine with the EU legislation. Copenhagen criteria are really general, and each country has politically to assess them, whereas we fit, and whereas when you come to Ukraine, you feel the same as you do in your country. I mean, from the protection of your rights, law enforcement agencies, also judicial system, but also doing economy. This is actually 3 points which I would raise.
Ну, так, для общей информации, может быть, нашим зрителям, Латвия в 1995 году подавала заявку на вступление в Евросоюз, и мы попали туда только в 2004 году. То есть почти 10 лет нам понадобилось, чтобы выполнить все требования Евросоюза и быть подходящим членом ЕС. Скажите, вот если мы говорим о перспективах на сегодняшний день, как вам кажется, победа в войне будет являться льготой для того, недаром я упомянула Латвию, да, вот эти вот 9 лет, чтобы этот процесс вступления укоротить, сократить, сделать более быстрым?
I don't believe that there are some exceptions. I do believe that even candidacy status is a deserved decision. And once the negotiations will be opened by each chapter of EU acquis, then we will identify what kind of obligations Ukraine should do before joining the European Union. Comparing the time frame for joining the membership, so we totally live in different time comparing to that period. First of all, we do plenty of things in digitalized manner. So we have plenty of text which could be easily translated and then transposed into legislation. So from the point of view of legalistic wording, you can transport easily quite a lot. So you do not need to spend that many time as it has been predicted. What would be the key challenge is to also to provide necessary proofs that the legislation is working and is enhanced. For that, we will have plenty of time, and I do believe that decision will be made on that kind of assessment, whereas it is working. There might be some conditions on which we will be implementing or passing the legislation with reference that will come into force on the day one when we will be member of the European Union. But still, it's quite understandable for Ukrainian society. There is no way to another community than this, because the problem was that plenty of decision makers were looking at East instead of West, and that it made too many stories to understand what kind of solution should be made at the national level.
Скажите, а является ли вектор Украины в Евросоюз непоколебимым? Я сейчас даже говорю не на уровне госуправления, а на уровне каком-то бытовом, простых людей. Они видят вступление в Евросоюз как что? Как улучшение качества жизни, как какой-то щит, защита, как противостояние России. Как воспринимается это Украина? Можете вы как-то подытожить, может быть? То, что происходит в политических кругах, здесь все понятно. А сами жители, что под этим понимают?
Well, the level of support to EU membership is quite rising because of war. And not only, even before the war, there was a clear understanding by people that European Union is a system of values and internal changes, that you change something, you create a good life in your country, and this is a possibility. I had plenty of opportunities to listen to former leaders of European Union from different countries. One of them is Lithuanian President Dalia Grybauskaitė. She started from 1990 to be a Minister of Finance, and she used the possibility of these criteria to change her country. So I do believe that Ukrainians also consider these obligations as a possibility to change the country. It's from one end. From another end, the possibility to have free travel for Ukrainians as a visa-free regime, which has been granted to Ukraine, gave plenty of understanding how this legislation and the system works in practice. So Ukrainians went to European Union, not actually immigrated or fled the country. They went for some time and they came back. So they came back with understanding, values, system, and they started to create their own companies and as well as to promote practices, even civil society organizations as well.
Еще про один союз хотелось бы поговорить, про НАТО. Президент Польши Анджей Дуда, вот газета The Wall Street Journal недавно сообщил, что НАТО рассматривает возможность заключения долгосрочного договора с Украиной, в рамках которого вот Киев будет получать западные вооружения, военные технологии на постоянной основе. Вы что-нибудь об этом знаете, в договоре?
Well, I'm not familiar with any kind of an agreement which is circulating. I would say that everyone is actually expecting the good outcomes from NATO summit in Vilnius this year. And recently, a G7 meeting with the presence of my president in Hiroshima showed that Ukraine is in line with all other international partners, and we are getting full military support needed to win this war, and we still have to continue doing that. But NATO is considered, even by society, as a precondition to stop generally the war, as a signal to stop ordinary the war, and that it will be kind of guarantee for us instead of Budapest memorandum, which actually failed to be implemented by the parties. And right now Ukraine needs a system. We have really experienced army already. We have a best knowledge how in practice to use all Western weaponry, and it's obvious that NATO would need Ukraine as a combatant to also to assure that no one will try to hit NATO countries, because Ukrainians can step in as well with their practice.
Если ВСУ удастся провести успешное контрнаступление, может быть, не одно контрнаступление, скажите, такие действия помогают как-то на, допустим, проведение саммита в Вильнюсе, вот саммита НАТО, на то, чтобы, я не знаю, вот, либо больше помощи предоставлять Украине, либо задуматься о том, что она действительно, может быть, стать союзником одного из альянсов европейских?
Well, when you see the situation, what is going on actually in Ukraine with all Western weaponry and military, you have to think about Rammstein format. So ministers of defense and also heads of military headquarters, they exchange information on a daily basis. So you don't need to show something to before summit, because everyone who is around the table, they know the situation on the ground. So that's actually the point. So we already started to be a member of NATO by exchanging full information, and that all ministers of defense, they understand the situation on the ground. What is actually missing is a global decision on granting the NATO membership to Ukraine for specific date and time, probably after the war is ended. No one wants you to get it before the war. But there should be a clear roadmap so that everyone is aware that we need to fix this. That's all. There won't be any discussions anymore on that. So there will be only just one decision to win the war, and the day one will be there as well.
Мой последний вам вопрос на сегодня. Мир уже больше года наблюдает за человеческими трагедиями в Украине с тех пор, как там появился агрессор, и многие страны объединились, чтобы помочь защититься от врага и сохранить мир на планете. Скажите, вот как вам кажется, помимо первых официальных лиц страны, президента, премьера, министра обороны, какая заслуга в достижении именно такого единства всех вокруг Украины заключается в работе именно украинских дипломатов, именно украинских послов, которые находятся на местах?
Well, Ukrainian diplomats are those which are passing plenty of information to their host countries on the situation on the ground. Those which were first to transfer information from the ground, and also to explain how international support is needed in Ukraine, also to assure that the international leaders who were coming to Ukraine from first days of war, it was quite tough job to do that. Secondly, Ukrainian diplomats had to deal with a rising number of Ukrainian citizens who fled Ukraine seeking for interim homes, and that was one of the best ever outcomes for us. But the most important, I would say, work of the diplomats is that currently you see the results and the picture of G7 summit. So you see the president of Ukraine. So it's also a victory of Ukrainian diplomacy nowadays. It's a victory for the president, who actually leads the Ukrainian diplomacy together with the head of the office of the president and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but still diplomats on the ground, that what they are doing this type of work. Also a daily sharing information. So that was actually one of the key strengths. From military point of view, also, agreements is one thing, but how to implement agreements is another thing. So you have to see that Ukrainian diplomats did quite a big job to make these weapons arrive to Ukraine.
Ну, надеюсь, что вы будете в своей большой работе успешными и будете работать на благо украинцев. И находясь еще в начале пути, я желаю вам удачи. Надеюсь, это наша не последняя встреча. Благодарю вас за то, что вы сегодня пришли к нам в студию, согласились на это интервью. Я благодарю зрителей, которые смотрели, с нами были. С нами, напоминаю, можно сказать, еще новый посол Украины в Латвии Анатолий Kutsevol был сегодня гостем в нашей студии. Напоминаю, что мы теперь доступны также и на аудиоплатформах Spotify, SoundCloud, поэтому ищите нас там, подписывайтесь, слушайте. Ну и смотрите новости. Сегодня вечером рассказываем о самых главных событиях не только в Латвии, но и в мире. На этом у меня все. Прощаюсь с вами и увидимся завтра в прямом эфире. До скорых встреч. До свидания.